is showing here. It's a tablet device. When you are out there and you're in a store and you've got your mobile device, a tablet, a phone, whatever, to have that code that runs natively on that device, and once again, the instant updates because it's a web app, but runs natively on those devices means that you're going to get amazing performance, be able to do real-time calculations on those devices. That Blazor web app is being used for in-store setup and configuration, and then they can interact with the store wirelessly using mobile devices. Very cool stuff that Blazor now enables you to do that is faster in running native code on these devices than running interpreted code with JavaScript. Now, Blazor's been through a couple versions, coming into now .NET 6, and there's a bunch of new features that's available for you if you're a longtime Blazor developer. I can't believe I just said longtime Blazor developer. This framework's been around for about 5 years now, from when it was proof of concept and it was just an experiment. But now we have long-term Blazor developers that you've been evolving applications since it was an experiment with .NET Core 3 and 3.1, and that first Blazor Server release came out, and we saw Blazor WebAssembly released at Build 2 or 3 years ago, Blazor WebAssembly with .NET 5, and now Blazor WebAssembly ships with a long-term support release with .NET 6. That means you're going to get support in the box, free support for at least the next 4 years, okay? That means we're continuing to invest and grow this technology, okay? You're going to continue to see support. You're going to continue to see us push and deliver and develop new capabilities for this framework. Chat room, I have my eyes over here. If you have any questions, please interrupt me as I'm going through here. I'm just going to touch on a couple of these bullet points here, and we're going to go in and I'm going to do the intro demo, and we'll take a look at an application and see some of the cool things that we can do now with Blazor in .NET 6. So all kinds of neat stuff. Like I mentioned, .NET Hot Reload is the big thing that we pushed as part of .NET 6. This is a tremendous feature for building and maintaining applications, especially with our designers. Because let's face it, when you're building an application and you have to recompile, redeploy in order to test and see exactly how things work, well, you want that to refresh immediately in the browser, right? This was the problem we had years and years ago with web forms, right? And I hope I'm not scaring anybody by saying ASP.NET Web Forms. We loved that framework. It was a fantastic time. Web forms, right? Let's face it, when you changed anything, any behavior in the user interface, and you wanted to see it reflect, you wanted to see if that user interface change was effective, you had to recompile and rebuild and rerun the application. You might as well go get a cup of coffee and come back in a few minutes. And it would finally be ready and you'd get to see it. .NET Hot Reload builds on a little bit of what we've learned from Browser Link. And gets you into that immediate refresh and update capability so you can see your user updates, user interface updates immediately in the browser. State persistence during pre-rendering, really great stuff. That's going to mean that when you pre-render your applications, that when you're hosting them on ASP.NET Core, it'll remember state as you return and navigate around pages. Error boundaries, we improved error handling there, so it's not just something at the top level of your application, but you can actually place boxes around parts of your user interface and say, trigger an appropriate error display when something doesn't behave properly in this section of markup. Ahead of time compilation. This is an amazing performance improvement that we're seeing now because not only can you deliver and run your .NET application, and .NET applications we know are just in time compiled. That last compilation bit happens when it arrives and your users start using the application, right? So it means we can keep our application size small. With ahead of time compilation, we can improve the performance of your application by doing that final compilation ahead of time so that it runs exactly when you need it. Did I just lose the screen? I see Teams went black on me. Did I lose the screen there? No?
No,
Yes.
we're good.
I still see it.
We're good. Okay. So with ahead of time, it you're going to end up pushing some of that native code into your deployment, and it's going to get shared. It's going to increase the size of your application, but in our testing, it's going to improve the performance of your application by upwards to 50 times. Really good stuff if you need high performance in the browser. Now, that's not something I'm going to recommend if you're just doing standard forms over data, right? If you're just building an application that shows a bunch of data or images or typical website thing. But if you're doing machine learning in the browser, if you're doing some data analysis in the browser, that's going to be important to you to be able to have that AOT capability. Okay. Native dependencies, that means you can bring your own DLLs, your own C++ compiled DLLs, right? Those native binaries, bring them and deliver them so they run on WebAssembly. We've improved download size and on and on. Lots of great stuff that's happening with WebAssembly. I'm going to go into and show just a few of these in our demos here. How do you get started with Blazor? Real easy. Go to www.blazor.net. We didn't even put the www on the slide, but blazor.net. Install the .NET 6 SDK. If you're watching this after .NET 6 was released and there's a new version of .NET, yes, .NET 7, .NET 8, .NET Foo. Go to blazor.net and you'll be able to install that SDK. And we've got support to run in all your favorite Visual Studio editors, Visual Studio for Mac. Of course, Visual Studio Code with the C# extension. And you can even get started with Blazor at the command line. One of my favorite places to work with Blazor. Build and run on the command line so I can focus on working in my browser, tuning things, and in my favorite editor, whether it's Visual Studio Code or even Vim. I can edit and recompile and see those updates in the browser. So let's take a look at that quick demo. That first demo, we're going to talk about getting started, what you can do with Blazor, what are some of the cool things going on out there. I'm not going to start in Visual Studio. Visual Studio is nice, but let's start somewhere else. Let's go to the command line and have a little bit of fun getting started over here, shall we? So I'm going to create a directory here. Let's call this Philly Code Camp 2022. I will drop into that folder and let's create a new Blazor application. So I can do .NET new list and I can see all the templates that are available to me from .NET. Run that one more time now that I've shrunk the font size a little bit. And you can see there's a bunch of stuff available to you now with .NET 6. I've got all my .NET MAUI templates up at the top so I can build mobile and native applications, Android templates, ASP.NET templates in here, but here's my two Blazor templates right there. Same two templates are available for you in Visual Studio. We'll take a look at those in just a little bit. Build for Blazor so it runs on the server. Build with Blazor so it runs with WebAssembly. And you can also build that hybrid Blazor app up here as well. But I want to focus on WebAssembly today. We're going to go through and take a look at that one. So let's run .NET new Blazor WASM. WASM stands for WebAssembly, right? So first, Blazor app, and -O says output into this folder. Now this is going to create a static website for me. Now, what do you mean by static website? Static website means it's just static HTML and the C# that we're going to ship that runs in the browser. There's no server-side component. There's no server-side interaction that happens here. It's all running in the browser. Now, you can also run the .NET new command and pass in a help argument, and it will show you all the different configuration switches that you can use to build a Blazor application. Now, a lot of these are features that you can turn on in Visual Studio 2022. You can activate, there's checkboxes, there's drop-down boxes that allow you to configure some of these capabilities. Framework is a standard thing that's in there. You can tell it not to restore packages. This is one that I wanted to make sure I called out here. -HO, which is short for hosted. If specified, it generates that server-side version of ASP.NET Core, a server-side application, a web application that will host your Blazor WebAssembly application. So it ends up being like a layered cake. Here's the web server that will run the application, and you put your Blazor WebAssembly application on top of that so that it can be delivered to the folks that interact with the application. Now, you don't necessarily need this if you're just going to copy the HTML and static contents from a WebAssembly application out to IIS, out to Internet Information Server on Windows, or you're going to put it on an Nginx server, or you want to copy it into a Docker container, and you're just going to expose that port 80 or port 443 so that folks can interact with the application. You have choices here how you want to configure it. If you want to activate a authorization, all kinds of great stuff here that you can configure. I'm not going to go through and reference all of these. You can spend some time taking a look at that. So I created that folder, first Blazor. Let's drop into that folder, and I'm going to run Visual Studio Code here. I like to use Visual Studio Code to kind of show in a first demo that you can really do anything you want, use any tool you want to get started with Blazor. And my Visual Studio Code is taking its good old time starting here, and it went over to the other screen. That's fine. We're going to put you over here, and we're going to end up bringing up another a browser here on the right side. So here's Visual Studio Code, and come on now. Why am I having a hard time? There we go. All right. So I have in here a very simple set of files. If you're used to seeing Razor files that define and show the way that you can pull together C# and HTML as a template to render and deliver content, we have .razor files in here that specify and contain those templates. I like to show folks the program file to start here. This is what bootstraps and gets things configured here for us to start working with that Blazor application. I'll zoom in just a smidge there so you can see everything on one screen. There we go. It's 14 lines of code, and I've put a couple carriage returns in there. That's right, I said carriage returns instead of enters. That's how old I am, okay? I'm referencing a typewriter. Real easy. WebAssembly host builder, create the default. There are all kinds of options that you can use, but quite frankly, nobody does use them. But there are configuration options in there that you can dive into if you want to change the way that the web server starts up and starts not web server, I'm sorry, WebAssembly starts up and starts presenting your application. We define a series of root components here. Just like if you were using Vue or Angular or React, you define some sort of location on page, on the HTML page, where you're going to insert your single page application. And we do that here by specifying we're going to insert an app, a C# application called app. It's a class. It's specified right here. And we're going to put it where this CSS selector, the hash app, defines where that is on my HTML page. So it's going to look for something with the ID app to place. Next, this is a new feature that was added in .NET 6, we specify a head outlet. This is someplace where we're going to be able to interact with the head of our HTML page. And we're going to place this outlet, this place where we can inject extra content from our Blazor application after the head tag. Now, that means we can interact with this after the initial head tag, right? It's going to be just inside, and you're going to be able to interact with it. We make an HTTP client available so we can go and request content from other web services, right? You, just like in Blazor, Vue, and React, you need to reach out into API services, whether they're gRPC or OpenAPI or some other RESTful service you want to reach into and either push data into them or fetch data so that you can interact with it. And of course, finally, start running that application. 99% of the time, you're going to set what's in this file and forget it. Literally, this is boilerplate stuff that just gets your application running. You may put some things in here for dependency injection. You can put that in here. That feature from ASP.NET Core is available here as well. But for the most part, this is a set it and forget it file. We have the content in there. We're going to set up a couple services and things in there like our HTTP client, and we're going to put it behind us. So this has just a couple pages configured in the default here, including this index page, which when we look at it is like, that looks like part of an HTML page, but where's my HTML tags? Where's my head and body? You said, Fritz, you said to me you're going to inject stuff into the head of the page. I see this page title thing. That's not a title tag, and certainly not in the head of a page. What is that? And you have a page directive up here that looks kind of weird, and survey prompt. That's not an HTML tag either. What is that? Let's back up just a smidge and take a quick look. This all actually lives and is delivered inside of index.html. Just like ASP.NET Core, where we have a www root folder that specifies, here's the static content of my application. This is where I don't want the web server to interact. I have my CSS in here. I have my images. I have static HTML files in here. You web server, don't interact with this folder. So if I go take a look at that index.html, now I see my HTML page that I'm used to seeing. And for those of you who have built with Blazor in the past, it looks kind of familiar because we're referencing a Bootstrap CSS sheet here. I've got an application CSS. I've even got this here, first Blazor styles CSS. More on that in a minute. And I've got a user interface here if there's an error, and here's where we bootstrap and load WebAssembly with a little bit of JavaScript that comes standard that knows how to start up WebAssembly. And remember we said back in program, we're going to inject our Blazor application where there's a CSS app, CSS selector for hashtag app. Wherever that is, that's where we're going to inject our WebAssembly application. So it's going to inject it right here where it says loading. All right, let's take a look at this. Let's run this application and take a peek at what we actually get out of this. So we can run .NET, of course, at the command line. You saw I ran .NET new. I can run .NET, don't run .NET, run .NET. And I can run build to build my application. I can execute it with a verb run to run the application, and it'll open a browser and I can see and interact with it. But I'm going to use .NET Watch. .NET Watch is going to run the application. It's going to restore any missing dependencies, build the application, and then run it, opening a browser so I can interact with it. And then I didn't end then. I'm sorry. I use the word and then a lot when I present. And a mentor once told me, you use that like a crutch, Fritz. You cut it out with the and thens. And then after it's running, it's going to create a file watcher. It's going to watch the files in your project. And as they change, it's going to push updates immediately into your browser. And we're going to get our first sense of hot reload here. So let's .NET Watch. And I'm going to let this run in the background. We're going to be able to see it start up. Its projects are up to date for restoring. It's going to do that build. There it is. And it's going to start the browser for me. There it is. And it started the browser, of course, on another screen. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. Way to go. I'll put that over there. And let's put Visual Studio Code over here. And there's my Blazor application. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so we get the side panel there. Hello world, welcome to your new app. How is Blazor working for you? And that was exactly what we saw in this index page here. There it is. Hello world, welcome to your new app. How's Blazor working for you? And hot reload is in effect. It's watching and will apply changes as I make them. So if I change this to hello Philly.net, save that change, you see the checkbox up there. And of course, it's not applying my hot reload. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. Why am I not getting my hot reload in the browser? Why does this always happen to me when I try this? No hot reload changes to apply. Yes, there were. There were. It was there. I saw you. I don't believe you. Come on now. Make sure I've got everything set right here. I'm not going to turn on debugging. And you're not even giving me the updated rebuild here. What? Are you kidding? I'm not even getting that. You make me sad. I'm going over to Firefox because I had it working in the Firefox demo earlier. It makes me feel good when that kind of thing happens, you know? So you know the bits are fresh, that I'm not pulling one over on you. It's still giving me hello world. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? I'm going to force a reload by hitting Control R. Otherwise, I'm going to end up going over to server because I know that server's going to work for me. There it is. Like, I literally work with this every day on stream, and it does the thing here. Welcome to Philly Code Camp. Is it? There's the check, and it didn't patch the screen. Are you kidding? I am shocked and annoyed at this. All right, fine. I'm going to go over, and we're going to .NET new Blazor Server, my first server. So Blazor Server has the exact same structure as Blazor WebAssembly, except everything runs on the server. Everything runs and is delivered from a server, so you end up with a very small footprint being delivered inside the browser. So I will .NET let's open that in Visual Studio Code. And I'll show you how it's the exact same code, the exact same capabilities. And we're going to get into actually a Blazor static website in just a little bit here. And we'll see how that runs. So yeah, Control R gets it in there. Can I give a high-level overview of using a framework for web UI other than Bootstrap? Yeah, clock end. We'll get into that. Absolutely. So I am just a smidge frustrated. So program has a lot more content in here because it's building and running all of ASP.NET instead of a static website like the other one. But when we look at pages, like my index page here, it's identical. It's the same content. And now I'm annoyed that something's not configured and running properly on this machine. My apologies. But we will get this running so you can see hot reload working. Because that might be a little annoying when I get into the other demo later. There we go. So hello world, how is Blazor working for you? You go away. Change this to hello Philly.net, and I don't even need to, oh, come on. You're going to really do this? There it goes. I thought I had occasional autosave turned on here. Really? Autosave, yes, please. So that should be working here. And I can now say, welcome to Philly Code Camp. I don't even have to touch it. Really? What am I missing here? It's not even giving me, you make me sad. Do that again. And it should autosave, there it is, and just pop up on the right side. So for folks who are doing this as building applications and they're using their user interface design skills and they want to test out, hey, what does this look like, right? Gosh, I want to make sure that it does the things right. It's text decoration, underline. When it saves, it just updates immediately in the browser, and I get that instant feedback that it works and looks the way that I want it to. So it makes me feel good as a developer that it's behaving, that it's reloading immediately, and I know whether I've broken something and it looks the way that I want. Now, Surveyprompt here is a component that I can jump into, surveyprompt.razor. So in Blazor, we can create components by just putting a file out there with a .razor extension. That's pretty cool. That's pretty easy to understand. I can teach that to some kids, and they can pick up and run with that easy. And I can see immediately, here's what this block of content looks like. Please take and survey is in here, right? So it says brief survey. And tell us what you think. Clearly, that's this content here, and it's passing in a little parameter here. At title is this property down here. We have a code block that contains a bunch of C# code, properties and methods that we can interact with right here. And they're exposed as a parameter on that tag, right? just like we're used to seeing these attributes on a tag. It's a parameter attribute over here, turns this property, and it must be on a property. It can't be on a field. Turns it into a attribute that we can pass in here. Right, save that, and it updates immediately. It's passing all the way through. It's not just the code, the HTML, the CSS style that updates and reflects immediately in the browser, right? So let's get rid of that styling there, and it updates. Now there's code that you can run in here. Of course, I have a counter here. This is the simplest demo, and I show this all the time just because it's real easy for folks to pick up on. We have a button here, and when I click on it, I want it to update and increment that counter. So I just put a method out here, increment count, and it calls this method, increment count, and we're just going to take that field, current count, and increment it, and we're going to place the content there. Piece of cake. But I can not only change this, right, click and interact with that, but I can change that value there. You saw the check up here. This value didn't change, but it's now counting by fives. So hot reload lets you inject. It preserves the state of the application as you're working with it. It remembers exactly what the fields and values are, so you can continue interacting. Okay? Now, last thing that I want to show you that's in the default template, and then I'll come back to our question, is the fetch data sample. I showed you where it has an HTTP client that it was injecting. Here, because I changed the server side, we're injecting a service, and in that service down here, we're calling go get forecast async. If this was running client side with the WebAssembly, this would be an HTTP get data, right? We'd call get JSON data, and we pass in a URL endpoint. Instead, this is calling a service that we've injected, and we inject the same way we do in ASP.NET Core at inject, and we can pass in one of these cross-cutting services that you need in pages, components, and use it on this page. So when I click over to fetch data, it's already loaded this data behind the scenes using this service, and it's painting it on screen for us. Let me put a little carriage return there so you can see it. So I can very easily change the way this behaves, right? I can certainly do the same thing here, style, font weight, bold, and well, wait, that's a TH. Hang on. That's not right. That's not right. So if I do something like set color red, it changes the color to red. Okay, that's fine. But there were different style sheets that were included in here that were added as part of this. And around the idea of adding and using your own CSS framework, you want to use your own framework with Blazor. You can do that by going and adding those appropriate style sheets down here in root inside the CSS folder. And you can see we brought in and we put down Bootstrap right here, Open Iconic. So we have the font libraries here with all the appropriate licensing. They're all copied in and sitting here. So if you want to bring in something else that you want to use, maybe you want to use, Tailwind is an example that I've heard folks suggest. You can bring in the Tailwind CSS into this folder, link it in the base page for the application. Now, when it runs server side, of course, I went and looked at the wrong one. When it runs server side, it places the content in this file, layout, CSHTML, and it has the full HTML and all the content. So you're going to add, of course, your CSS styles referenced here. And inside your pages, you're going to want to add those appropriate classes that call out, or components, classes that call out into those various CSS classes that you want to interact with. Okay, now that's nice. It absolutely gets you set up here. I'm in Bootstrap. I get the behavior that you kind of expect with Bootstrap, with that responsive, interactive user interface. I shrink it down. I get my hamburger button up here, and life is good. This other set of styles here is a way for you to specify styles for individual pages, for individual components, and for the layout on CSS pages that are specific to those files. And it does what we call isolated CSS. It only applies to that page. So inside of my pages here, where is it? Inside of shared, there it is. Here I have main layout CSS, and it has styles that are only applied to the layout of the page. I can make changes in here and it won't apply to the content of the page. So let's create another CSS page. I'm going to create a file inside of pages here. I'm going to create fetch data razor, and it ends with .css. So ASP.NET knows that these two are kind of connected. All right, you see already here, it's refreshing the page and going and loading some content. So that weather forecast that's up at the top there, that H1, I can put H1 in here, and I can change and update this, and it will start to reload and bring in that content appropriately for me. Now, if I remember correctly, I have to restart the scoped CSS here so that it finds it in the watch and starts reloading it. So that's going to reload, and I should see this pickup, right? So that H1 doesn't have it, and I go over to fetch data, and it does. And I can start working with this. So just like before, I'll add text decoration underline. That should save, update, and now I have the underline appearing, right? I can do table tr, and what is it to do the even ones, right? What is it, nth child, right? I forget how it is, what the trick is to do the even ones. No matter, right? I can do tr, and I can do background color, and let's set it to EEE, and we should get it. There it is, a little bit darker. So I've got CSS isolation that updates and paints things on the screen for me. Easy stuff to pick up and follow and see how it improves the website. And as a user interface designer, I can follow along here. So when you're building with Tailwind or whatever other framework you want to use, start dropping in and building components that you can reuse. Just like I showed you, I have that survey prompt down here, and put your appropriate classes in here so that it adheres and has those features inside your components that match up to your CSS framework. So you can just grab those appropriate components, reference them on pages, and it will reflect and paint appropriately. Now, there are folks out there that have built, I'm going to deviate from script here a little bit. There are folks who have gone and built some wrappers, some Blazor component wrappers, and I believe I'm thinking of, is it Blazor Strap? There it is. That will allow you to build with Blazor and Bootstrap. It's got the Bootstrap framework built in, so you can reference and use Blazor components that have the same name as the Bootstrap classes that you want to create. You want to create a deck of cards. You want to create a menu. You want to do something with responsive buttons, responsive user interface. They're all built in as components in here, so you can work with that and not have to think about bringing in the appropriate CSS styles out there. You just add this package into your project just like you would any other package that you are adding and referencing, and it will light up, and you'll be able to start working with those components in your Blazor project. All right, let me move on. I want to go back over to the slides, and then I want to talk about Blazor static websites in just a second here. So go back to here. So WebAssembly build tools, you can build and run faster, and I mentioned briefly that you can run faster with this. Go back. You're giving up the ghost here, Fritz. So ahead of time compilation is going to make things run, like I said, upwards to 50 times faster, but I don't recommend it unless you're doing some actual heavy lifting and computing in the browser. Runtime relinking. So when we publish and deliver content in the browser, well, you have to deliver the .NET runtime. That's how .NET works. You carry a runtime with you, but you don't want to carry the whole thing. gosh, remember back in the day, we had to make sure .NET Framework was installed with Windows, and it's what it's a couple hundred meg to have all those things installed. I don't want to have folks be required to install and bring down a couple hundred meg in their browser. We can get browser size, the content compressed and much smaller running in the browser. And of course, native dependencies. And a demo that I don't have with me, but a lot of folks have been interested in, is seeing SQLite can be recompiled and delivered and run in the browser. That's pretty interesting and compelling. Now, Blazor WebAssembly, we trim things down. We don't just link the DLLs, the libraries that you need, but we also trim. We remove extra features from them that you don't need, right? We only include the DLLs that you requested, and we trim out, we remove those extra features. Between trimming and compressing with Brotli, that default template that you saw me navigate around and interact with, by default, it ships 1.7 meg into the browser. With .NET 6, we can get that down to 1 megabyte. That's a 40% size reduction, and we think that is much more palatable for the typical user that interacts with Blazor websites. Not just Blazor websites, actually, all websites, right? You think about going and you navigate to YouTube or you navigate to twitch.tv and you start watching video there. You're downloading about 5 meg of JavaScript to interact with those videos that you're watching, and to have Blazor running your default application in a meg with all the trimmings that come with .NET. We think that's pretty good, and we're still working on making that even smaller. All right. So I mentioned all these features in Blazor and .NET 6. I want to talk about Blazor static websites for the last few minutes that I have here. Rob, we've got until, is it 50 or 55 or the top of the hour? I want to make sure I don't run over here. Let me know there in chat. So let's talk about a Blazor static website, right? So Blazor static website is a feature that's available to you as part of Azure. And are you kidding me? What are you doing over there? Visual Studio. That's right. I don't know what it's doing. There is a default template out there that you can use that brings in an API, and that API runs on Azure Functions. So you can focus on delivering just the features you need inside of your application. So I built a little website to catalog all of my hats. I don't know if you know this, but I've got a few hats. I'm known for wearing hats. I had to wear my Sixers hat today. I think the beard would approve of that. And we've got things like this where I just want to be able to reach into my database, fetch that collection of hats so I can paint it on the screen so folks can interact with that collection. So I wrote a little method here that quite simply reaches into a database repository, gets a collection of hats, and returns it. As an API, as an Azure function, it doesn't get much simpler than that, right? So I can then have my Blazor WebAssembly side of the application over here that actually has that one page that's going to spin up and fetch, here it is, fetch that hat collection from my API and put it into a collection of hat objects. And all I'm going to do as a Blazor application is I'm going to do a for each across those and output, well, a hat UI. Well, what's a hat UI? That's a component that I built, and it's sitting right here. And to the question we had earlier from ClockEnd, this is using Blazor, and I'm building a card. So I've got a card here with all the div soup that outputs all the information about the hat, when it was acquired, the name of it, and I've even got an image here that's coming out of Azure Blob Storage. I just want to put that on screen. Now I've set up, I'll show you here, I've set up my solution so that it will, where is it? Set the start of projects. So it will start both my API and run my Blazor WebAssembly application at the same time when I click start. And we're going to see my Azure Functions app run in the emulator. I don't know what you mean by a class library can't be started. That's not a class library, and you know it. There's my my Azure function. I'm going to force this to start. Yep, start a new instance of the client. And this is running in .NET 6. And it starts up here in the browser, and it's running locally with a static WebAssembly application. There's no server-side component. It's literally just pushing the content into the browser, and now I've got all of this content. It's the same Blazor component rendered again and again and again, and it's painted on the screen. Nothing to it, and I can do a search up here. If I want to search for Penn State hats, there's my 4 Penn State hats, and I've got a little CSS animation when you mouse over these. So I feel good about having just a little application that lets folks take a look at my carried away hat collection here. And I'm not actually serving data other than the images being delivered and doing that fetch from my API. I can publish this with GitHub out to my website, and I actually have, there's the source code. It's linked right up here in the middle. And all of my source code is available. It's publicly accessible. I've still got the same README out here that comes with the default template. But I have a workflow here that runs, and if you're familiar with GitHub Actions, this comes with the template by default. It will automatically deploy it to my Azure application. Not only that, but it will also set up feature branches here so I can take a look at those and test and make sure things work appropriately for me before it updates the website. So I can go out to now hats, c#fritz.com, and this is being delivered from Azure. There's no server running. There's just that one little Azure function that executes once when somebody navigates to the website, and it just echoes that data to format my Blazor WebAssembly application. Now that's nice. That's a little bit of brochureware to paint that content on the screen. And great, you had a component and it renders and it paints that stuff on the screen. That's fine and dandy. But what about something that's got some serious data in it? I want to do something just with a ton of data, a lot of interactions. I mean, Blazor looks like a toy at this point. You showed me a counter and fetching weather data. What about, something that's really production savvy and can do a lot more than that? I got you. I've been building an application on stream called ClipTalk, kliptok.com. And if you go to cliptalk.com, this is a website that lets you search for and filter through clips from Twitch streamers. Okay, now we're talking. So I can go to this website. I'm going to log on with Twitch, and I'm authorized. It's going to come back into the website here. Yep, there we go. There's my avatar. I'm logged in, and I can see some suggested streamers, some folks who are recently gone live, some of the other folks that I follow that have content out here that recently had clips created, and I can click into them and see this content load immediately on screen. These are loading and presenting videos that we can interact with and hear and see that content. I'm going to mute that, but videos playing with Blazor, loading, presenting content. I can search for content here. If I'm going to go search for something like RavenDB, I can find, here's this guy Fritz talking about RavenDB and interact with that here. And this is all built and running with Blazor WebAssembly on a static website being delivered into your browser. Okay? It runs with RavenDB running on Azure. There is more than 50 gigabytes of data in here that you can search through and interact with. You can click into and you can see all kinds of information about some of your favorite Twitch streamers when you log in here. There's our friend Layla Porter, some content from AWS, what have you. Okay, all built with Blazor WebAssembly. These are all components. Each one of these streamer names is a component. This little tab strip is a component. Each one of these clips is a component. The strip of statistics down here, that's a component. As you build these building blocks for your application, they come together and you can build bigger things. And all the API services running on the backside grow and shift. And Azure Functions are built with a consumption model. So as they change, as they get hit with more requests, they'll scale appropriately. It'll add more for you, add more instances for you to be able to handle the number of folks that are interacting with your application. And you don't have to worry about those initial requests just to get and present and load the content that's being served from that static website. Azure static websites are available now, and they're free. Free as in beer. Free as in you don't have to pay a thing to run this until you cross, I think it's 100,000 requests for the Azure functions that are running behind it. Don't quote me on that. Take a look at the pricing page yourself. There is a service level agreement version that you can get as well. That's $10 a month. $10 a month to run an application and hit hundreds of thousands of requests on Azure functions, after which it costs you pennies for each 10,000 requests that come into your Azure function. Really great stuff. I can run the static version of this website for literally pennies a month. My charges come in on the database and the 50 gigabytes that I'm hosting out there. So I've covered a lot here. I've shown you real world applications that are built by GE, by Microsoft. I've shown you now a social media page that I've been building. I build this live on my Twitch stream that you can check out and learn more about. I showed you my hat collection, a little bit of brochureware out here that has source code available you can click into and take a look at and learn more about how that's built. The templates are available for you free online. There's so much you can do with Blazor. It's easily my favorite framework to build things with on the web right now. Add in your favorite CSS frameworks. Integrate, and you can still reach out and do JavaScript interop to work with all the cool JavaScript tools and techniques that you've been using for years and years. Blazor is going to just make your web development experience better. My name is Jeff Fritz. Thank you so much for joining today's session. How we doing there, chat room? Any other questions? Happy to stick around and answer a few before the next session starts. Nice. Thank you, Jared. Appreciate the kind words there. Yeah, John, Control R does the refresh. It forces a complete rebuild when you're running .NET Watch. Now, I wanted to show that you can also do hot reload with the with that Hats app, but I was running out of time and I wanted to jump through this. Yes, I believe the session was recorded. I thought I saw the recording button up there. You can definitely find a copy of this out there. All right. I think I see folks heading out for the next session. I hope you have a great rest of your day here. 3 o'clock later today, I believe that's after the event's over. I'll be over on Twitch, and I'm hosting the folks that were the first program managers for .NET on a panel discussion talking about the 20th anniversary of .NET. So hope you tune in over there, twitch.tv/C#Fritz, and I will see you next time. Yep, I'll drop that link in real quick. The YouTube is the same handle, same screen name. You can find me over on the YouTube. All right, friends. Have a great rest of your Philly Code Camp, and I will see you later. Take care.